I'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast. And today we're doing a podcast with interesting people. One of those people is Peter Miles. If you haven't been on a previous podcast with Peter, Peter, why don't you share just a little bit about yourself, a short bio, and then once you do that, kind of get us caught up on what you've been doing the last few months.
Short bio. I'm a country boy from England. Grew up in a little village with 60 houses in it. Went to school there for 7 years, and then went to agricultural college. Spent some time in Africa when I was 21, starting a business. Came back, worked in agriculture and agriculture-related things for about 10 years. Trained to be a forensic management accountant in my 20s. Became a commercial pilot in my early 30s. Wrote on a piece of paper one day when my eldest son was born, cars, bikes, boats, planes. Decided I wanted to focus on cars because I'd grown up in that environment. Had 6 jobs in 3 years, having joined Land Rover North America, became chief operating officer, and then president of Rolls-Royce, chief operating officer of BMW Group Americas. Sadly got divorced in my 50s, started again, decided I didn't want to be a corporate guy. Opened 3 new car dealerships, started being an executive producer in Hollywood, which was an interesting experience. Invested in software technologies, blockchain, and started supporting a disabled school for children in Africa, taking care these days of my very elderly parents in England, which is where I've just come back from now, and the school in Africa. Still involved in multiple businesses, 2 adult sons, 5 stepchildren, most of which are adults now at college working or the like, and family and friends spread around the world to make a difference. That's how I would summarize my myself these days, trying to make a difference.
Nice. So in the last, I don't know, 2 years, like what are some things that are happening in your mind? Like where's your mind been? Where is it going? What are you thinking about?
Well, I'm a deep thinker, so you could say everything I look at or comes across my path, I think about very carefully. But I would say a lot of my mind has been preoccupied with a simple question: what on earth is going on with the human race in the Western world? That's probably it, and trying to navigate that to make sense of it in daily life. Because it seems we've all gotten a little confused.
Is it just in the Western world too, or is it like the whole world is kind of going wonky a little bit?
Well, I think the whole world is like, I guess I've been and done business in 75 countries around the world over time. I spend these days more time or as much time in developing countries as I do in Europe or in America. And I would say the good news is for them, they're left so far behind, attached to values, principles, human values, principles, and morals, that they're actually mostly quite content, if not for the tug of war in developing countries with the West. So it's actually quite refreshing to spend time and get things done in those places, because in that sense, the way people think is quite simple. It's closer to fight or flight, those natural behaviors, fight or flight or hide, and just finding a way to survive and thrive in the simplest sense, absent a lot of emotional discord. So in that sense, they may not be achieving economic wealth, but in terms of mental health, I would say they're in much better shape than the West. And I would say in the West we've got a systemic mental health problem confounded by the way we've been taught to think in order to just get through life, as opposed to we're taught how to think, to be responsible, reasonable, rational, and purposeful. And that to me is kind of this, if I can, I don't know if I can say it simpler than that. Underdeveloped countries seem to be, because in a way a lack of emotional development in a confusing way, they're just more, it's more simple. It's a simpler place to get things done, participate in. Happiness is simpler. It's not defined in any way by what, or by so much by what you have or what you do or anything else. So, it's interesting because, in business, as you say, let's get back to the root of the problem, or let's get back to the core of the problem rather than focusing on symptoms, but get back to basics, right? And I think in that sense, the third world, which in theory is behind the first and the second, is actually still working in the genre of just, basics. A lot less confusing, I think, for people.
Tom, good to see you again. It's been a little while.
Yeah, Mark, good to see you. Peter,
Hey,
good to
Tom.
see you again.
So Tom,
I recognize that voice anywhere.
In the last year, 2 years, Tom, like, what have you been up to? And like, what are some observations, some thoughts, some questions, some things that are on your mind?
Well, still working and still trying to help some of the real estate people that belong to our company. And just listening, and I apologize for not being here when you all started, but listening to a little bit of what Peter says, I think a lot of it has to do with age too. I think the older, at least I know the older I get, the more I seem to focus more on me versus a lot, outreach or anything of that nature, and just what's making me happy, which is different than what it used to be. I mean, when you're younger and you've got that need to crawl that corporate ladder and make as much money as you possibly can and so on. All those things change, I think, once you get to a certain age and realize that it really isn't about the money. It's more about the way of life and the people that you love and the things that you like to do, the places you want to go share with the people that you love. And I think that's what's really kind of been the changing factor, even though I still love to work. I mean, I don't know why, I just do. But it's those other things that are more important. And I find myself where I used to not be willing to change my schedule, so to speak, from business to personal life. Now I'm more apt to change it to do the things that I want to do than the things that I have to do.
Nice. And what would be one question that you're trying to figure out the answer to?
My expiration date would be a good one.
And help
I
us
mean,
understand.
I've set my, as you know, I think I've told you this, I've set my own expiration date for about 110. And that was based on an article I read by a bunch of scientists and doctors who got together and looked at the human body as it's designed and figured that barring diseases and things like that, that it really was designed to be able to run for about 120 years. So I figured, well, I had cancer and whatever, so I'll whack out, knock off 10 and I'll shoot for 110. So.
All right. That's fair. And how old are you now, Tom?
So I just turned 76 in September.
Oh my goodness. You got 35 good years.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know why, but I was. 35 years is a long time. And so I'm going, okay, now what do I really want to do in those 35 years?
Right.
And so it really does give you something to shoot for. Will I make it? Yeah, I'm going to give it a good try, but we'll see.
So have you come up with anything, have you discovered anything, the big things that you want to accomplish in the next 35 years?
Well, I think I would like to better understand politics. And you and I have had a lot of discussion about that, Mark. Peter, you're laughing, so I know you kind of understand it too.
Absolutely.
When you have a country like we have, and you see all the backbiting and all the other stuff that's going on, it's interesting. I just got this book that Confronting the Presidents by Bill O'Reilly. And he's taken each president, starting with Washington and moving forward, just talking about who they are and what they are, their lives, their family, and so on. And it just gave me a whole different, and I just started it, so it just gave me kind of a whole different look at how those folks were governing back when it was just starting. And really, it hadn't changed much since the beginning. So there's got to be some better way of doing it, even though this is the best, I think, in the world. So we'll know who knows. Peter, you travel a lot. I've traveled a lot. And I don't know. But that's an interesting process.
It is. I meet with three guys every Thursday afternoon for coffee. And one guy is the owner of Blue Gate Theaters, Mel, and he owns half of Shipshewana in Indiana, so big Amish area. And he's ex-Amish, and he's in his mid-80s. And then Alvin Miller, he owns the Mercantile, and so I'm told that's the other half of Shipshe. So these guys are, really successful, and he's in his mid-80s too, and they've known each other since they were 12 years old. And really interesting. And then Ernie Yoder, he owns an RV company. So the three of them and I get together, and just interesting guys. And I mean, so many stories and so many thoughts. It's interesting because Mel, we went ahead and went there for a comedian, John Christ, I think it is, on Saturday. Interesting. Anyways, it's a wonderful theater. I was thinking about both of you guys. Like Peter said, he's going to come out and meet me sometime in person.
We've come close a couple of times.
Right. So if you guys are anybody listening to this podcast, you come out. The Blue Gate Theater is just like there's hundreds of guitars there from all of these artists and all these pictures and all these. I mean, it's amazing. And here's a guy that, grew up, Amish, and I think he had an 8th grade education. And here he's this amazing business guy. Anyways, we were talking a few weeks back, and he said that when he and his wife were early married, they get invited to come over to church, come over to dinner to different places on Sunday. And he said, it was interesting, Mark, because my wife and I, we were young and married. And after some of these dinners, you know, some of these lunches, we'd walk away and we'd drive away and we'd be like, man, I hope we never get invited back there again. And he said, and then other places we'd be like, man, that was awesome. Like, boy, that was wonderful. And he said, he shared that, I believe, with an older gentleman at the time. And the older gentleman said, well, Mel, do you want to know why that is? And Mel's like, yeah. And he's like, because there's 3 types of people in the world. I was like, okay. And he's like, they're small, medium, and large. And he said, small people talk about other people. Medium people talk about things like, you buy a boat, a car, they're talking about things. And then large people, they talk about ideas. And so we've had this conversation. Go ahead.
No, I said I get that. I think
Yeah.
you mentioned politics, but I think what's lacking in the world is, and generally, is leadership. Leadership of oneself and leadership of others, whether it's leadership of family, leadership of community, leadership of country, and it's, I think people are just confused about what even that means, because leading based on what? And so when you say ideas, or he says ideas, that just says to me, when from what we were talking about earlier, and then what Tom just mentioned about his expiry date, and I was laughing because not because I knew it had a double meaning, the end of life, but also to me that's the expiry date of end of relevance. We're all kind of trying to be relevant, and when we're young, and I know this from Tom's backstory, and I know it from my own, and yours similarly. We kind of go off into the world as young adults, and you're just trying to find your way, right? And those that are blessed with, I don't know whether you call it success or just happiness, which comes with, I don't know, productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, that turns into beyond leadership of self into leadership of others, is that I think it's the principles and the ideas that individuals have that can lead themselves and lead others. And it's the qualities behind that which makes people want to follow you as a leader. Notwithstanding, leaders are always following something. You're following an idea, you're following principles, you're following your heart. And what is all that, right? And to me, all of that is just, being able to enjoy every day, every experience, good, bad, or indifferent, warts and all, and doing your best. And I think in a more lost world, and politics to me is the epitome of the lost world. They're leaders, they're elected leaders, and it's what are the ideas, principled, valued ideas by which you're developing your ideas to lead us as a country. And so your friend, when he said there's small, medium, and large, and the large are the people of ideas, a general statement, I think that's absolutely true. Of course, it depends what the substance of the ideas is, what the core or the foundation, where it's coming from, where it's leading to, and that's back to the whole leadership. I think what we lack lacking more. I never like to talk about lack. Lack is a problem to be overcome, right? It's an emotional feeling. But I think what the world is lacking more, and what I wrestle with as I get older, too, is you don't want to necessarily play in the game of life that work led you down, even though you've been successful at it. You want to give back. It's not, and then today it's almost like I want to give back until my relevance expires, until what I've got to say, the way I think, has no value to anybody, other than hopefully just my kids and my family around me as I'm fading into insignificance. But I think it's just a general lack of leadership. And then when it comes to politics, it's I think the people that are running our country in that sense are lost. They're not grounded in anything that has intrinsic value. And I don't mean material things. I just mean in there, it's like there's this battle of the ego going on, and is completely ignoring the heart that tells you, you're doing something useful. Are you adding value to people's lives? Are you doing something useful for the planet we live on? And I don't mean running around, in an extreme way about it. Just in a balanced way where it's attractive, so that you can move people, communities, society, families into a better way of thinking, so that they can themselves feel fulfilled, whether they're rich or poor. But it's become a confusing place, I think, for a lot of people, because they don't know who to follow. And the ones we basically have to follow when it comes to government leadership seem to be lost.
It's interesting because
Generally.
it's interesting because when I was meeting with Alvin, I don't know, a couple months ago, I was really frustrated. And I love when I get frustrated because I always know there's a breakthrough. And I said to Alvin, I said, how do you have significant conversations, which I think is similar to relevance? And he looked at me and he laughed and he said, Mark, some people you can't have significant conversations with. And you guys know me well enough where as soon as somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm like, well, nice. This is and I'm like, why? And he said, because to have significant conversations, there needs to be some level of vulnerability. And I'm like, you got to be kidding. I'd never connected significance with vulnerability. And I looked at him, I said, that's genius. You're a genius. Remind me of Tom and Peter. I'd come up with something that I don't have. And it's like, so it's almost like we're born to be significant, but we don't do significant things. And it's like why don't, people want to be relevant, they want to be significant, but then they don't do significant things and they don't talk about significant things. And with this ongoing discussion, like Tom and I have often had over the years, well, all three of us, Peter too, and it's like, so I don't think level 1 or 2 or 3 are better. I don't think you're better if you're a level 3 than you're a level 1. I don't think you're better. I just think you're going to have more relevance. I think you're going to feel more significance, and you're going to feel more significance. So it's almost like people want to feel significance without doing anything that's significant. Because to do something that's significant, we have to work hard. And it seems like a lot of people don't want to do that. And then you have to take risk, and people don't want to do that. And people have to take, and there has to be sacrifice, and people don't want to do that. So it's almost like this race to significance without doing any work, without taking any risk, and without making any sacrifice.
Well, then you're back to your big, small, medium, big. I'd say, there's lots of words you can use to describe that feeling, significance, but it starts with, if you're not open to ideas, it doesn't matter whether it's ideas of a strategy for a company or the ideas in the Bible, right? These are all just ideas. So, but if you're not open to them, to explore them, to see what they
How do you get people to be open, Peter?
Well, this is now you're getting to the root of the matter, right? And it's a difficult one, because that expression, I can work with the willing, right? You can only work with the willing. And what is the willing? The willing are people that are open. How do you get people to be open? What is open? Curious, right? It's curiosity. But so you can't teach somebody to be curious.
You say you can't?
I think it's very difficult to say what's the formula for creating openness, curiosity, interest. It's like saying, how do you create passion, right? We know what these things mean, but the formula or the secret to teaching somebody to be open through curiosity depends on how old they are and what experiences they've had in life, because bad experiences, bad parenting trauma tends to close you down, right?
But it doesn't
So-
have to. It can open you up
No,
where
no.
you can be. So how do you go ahead and help people that have had trauma, which I think is all of us to varying degrees? How do you help people rather than being closed down, which I agree with you, there's a tendency to do, how do you have the opposite happen?
Well, to the extent,
Communication, I think, is one of the biggest elements.
well, that's the catalyst to
Help
everything,
me
right?
understand that, Tom.
You what?
Help me understand. What do you mean? Like, what does that
What
mean?
I found, I mean, obviously in 76 years, I've met a lot of people that would fit into all three of your, small, medium, and large groups. But what I found the consistency is when you honestly ask questions and then listen and then communicate back, that if you can get them to do one question, they'll do a second one, and they'll do a third one, they'll do a fourth one. And in the process, if they're the right questions, let me rephrase it. If they're honest questions, then I
What's
think
a
both parties
dishonest
learn.
question?
Well, you can ask somebody, hey, well, some meaningless type of question versus a question that, you're trying to understand who they are or what position, why they're feeling the way they're feeling. That, you're portraying the issue that I tend to care about your success or your failure or whatever it may be, but it has to be intelligently questioned to them, and then shut up and listen to them. And I don't think we listen enough. I think
Why?
we tend to question a lot. Why? I don't know. You got me. I don't know. But
Well,
I know when I look. Go ahead, Peter.
No, I was going to say, I think you're right on the money or onto something, whichever. But I think the asking somebody, depending on the situation, but why would you say that in an open way, not a condemning way? But why would you say that? Why would you think that? I think in the work sense, when or depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish, to open somebody up so you can collaborate and see what's going on. I think the only question you can ask to try and understand is why, depending on the nature. In the work situation, it's easier to do that when you say, somebody's talking about how to get something done, and you're not kind of understanding it. To ask why and then them explain is a good way to get to understand a different perspective that may not be allowing somebody to succeed. On a personal level, when you're dealing with people that are closed, it can be really tough, because when you ask somebody, why would you say that? Why would you feel that? Why would you think that, so that you end up feeling that? It's to get to the truth, to get to the core of why somebody isn't treating themselves optimally, is often painful. So I'm trying to still answer that question you were initiated with this. How do you get people to open up? Well, in the business world, it's not so hard, because you've got common objectives. In a personal relationship, and I mean personal relationship in business too, there's sometimes where you can see, think of it like this: when people are depressed or close to depression or exceptionally anxious, and you ask them why they're feeling that way, what kind of answer do you get, right? They're completely closed, the wall around themselves. And this is, to me, what you see in a lot of the youth today, also in my generation too. It's not like we're all immune from it. But if you've ever suffered from depression in that sense, and you're closed, and people try to help or ask you why or what's going on, and it's almost impossible to open that door until that person is ready, or there's a condition that will allow that person to actually tell their truth. So
But Peter, don't you think they also, that those kind of folks, because I agree with you, asking the first question is not good enough. They have to feel that the question that's being asked is sincere.
Yeah.
That the person asking the question honestly wants to have an open discussion and honestly wants to help. I mean, I think those are the things that I think I found with people that are bordering a little bit on depression or are
Yeah.
so enclosed that they're not communicating with anybody else.
Yeah, and of course it's Heinz 57. There's varying degrees of this. So, it's back to the expression, you can work with the willing. In other words, you can work with the open, or if the door's open a little bit, you can be careful and humble and sincere and gentle to ask those questions. But I find even more today compared to 5-10 years ago, even if I'm mentoring or coaching or trying to help people that seem to be open, when you start digging into what's in their way when it comes to their career or something else, it's very hard to ask the questions. Why are you saying that, well, to yourself and to me out loud? And so it's the extremes have got so much bigger, because you come down even to the simple stuff like gender today. So how many genders are there? There's two. No, there's not. And you go, well, if you can't have an open conversation around something that is at least closer to the truth, it might not be the absolute truth, but closer to the truth, then, because people are stuck in this, it's not openness when people are arguing about nonsense, things that, so that communication then, as people get more and more lost, is just harder to help, even if they want help. Because when you ask somebody, tell me what you're thinking, or tell me what you were thinking when these things went wrong. And a lot of the time I'm finding they say they can't tell you what they're thinking or why they're thinking it. And I don't know whether it's because they're confused. Historically in human psychology, somebody's suffered a terrible pain, a trauma sometime in their life, and they just bury it away and they don't want to talk about it. And that can have an impact on their life. But today it seems like people have got so sucked into meaningless thoughts and ideas, as opposed to purposeful thoughts and ideas that you can explore, share, chat about, and kind of filter it down into something that seems like the truth that you can take action on. Well,
I think a lot of that has to do with these damn things. This gives a person the ability to say things about other people anonymously almost and get away with it.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. It was interesting this morning. I was walking my dogs about 4:30 in the morning, and I came around the corner, and here was, I hardly ever see anybody out at that time in the morning. And then here was a younger person with their dog, and he's walking around with his cell phone in his hand, looking at it. The dog is trying to do his thing over here, but the guy hasn't noticed him, and so he's just kind of dragging the dog along. And I finally had to say, oh, did you come out here to do your cell phone, or did you come out here and let the dog do his thing? Because you're not letting him do his thing. Maybe you should let me take him for a while and you go on home and read your cell phone. And he got mad as hell. but I didn't care because I saw what I saw, and I thought I don't. That's another thing I think in getting older. You tend to get away with a little bit more than you did when you were a lot younger. Thank God, because I'd probably be dead if I didn't. So, but yeah, I mean, I think we just, I don't think we communicate enough.
Tom, that cracks me up your example there, because for a couple of reasons. There was an Eddie Murphy sketch back in, I think, the 80s, where one of the lines in it was, "You got to spend more time talking to the dog." There's a joke session about the relationship with a dog, but to the other side of that is, we live in humans and life itself is a connected world, right? You gotta stay connected. I don't mean dependent. I just mean connected, interdependent. Right. You want to call it that, to everything. There's dog whisperers, horse whisperers. There are people that are very connected to animals. People talk to their flowers, make them grow, swear that it works, and all that. We're a connected society, but there's so many things that are disconnecting us. Even the phone and when somebody has a irrelevant conversation or opinion of another person, basically you're casting a die on them, right? In the sense that if it sticks, it's like you can tell somebody they're stupid from when they were a child, and eventually they grow up saying they're stupid, right? And they think they're stupid. They're not stupid. It's just that they've been told they're stupid. The die is being cast on them. And so people walking around dragging their dog on a cell phone, they're just disconnected. They're disconnected from themselves. They're connected to that thing. That thing is not going to help them do anything.
So I want to be respectful of you guys' time. How much time do you have, Tom?
Oh, today I do have time.
And Peter, you?
I can certainly run for another half hour or so.
So
yeah,
for those that don't know, Peter teases me a lot. He teases and taunts me like relentlessly, and I love it. And so like when Peter talks about so you don't think people are stupid, Peter, or you do?
Listen, is Forrest Gump, I think it's Forrest Gump that says stupid is as stupid does, right? I don't like labels for any. I know we got to have them because we need to communicate, right? So everything has to have a label, a title, or this or that or the other. But I think it's all a bunch of nonsense, really. That to be observed, not to be adhered to. So do I think people can be stupid? Yes. Do I think people are stupid? No.
I think sometimes they do stupid things. I mean,
yeah, of course.
They may not be stupid mentally, but they are.
Nobody's
more stupid things.
Yeah, people may have learned to be do stupid things, but in that sense, this is where I say we're all born equal, right? It just depends what your programming was, essentially, minute by minute, hour by hour through life, that changes the way you are for the better or for the worse. And then at some time if you're maturing, you can if think life's going great for you, you can notice why that might be, that what things have happened to you along your path that may have allowed life to be feel so good all the time. Doesn't matter whether it is good all the time, but you feel good all the time. You can overcome anything, and vice versa too. When life isn't feeling good, some of the time, most of the time, you're failing more often than you're succeeding. But if you want to succeed more, double your failure rate, but don't take it the wrong way. Learn more lessons, right? So there's lots of things that push us over time to wake up and realize stuff. But I most certainly, I know I'm saying this in a long-winded way. No, I don't think people are stupid. I think they can learn to do stupid things, and they can learn to be thoughtless, and they can learn to be thoughtful, and everything in between. So, but I believe the 98% of us or whatever are all they're all born equal unless you're born with brain damage or something serious. I think we're all born equal, and then it's a question of how we apply what we've experienced and learned in life. And sometimes that sends us on a growing path, and sometimes it sends us on a diminishing path. We over time feel worse and worse, but the opportunity to wake up is always there. It's just a question of what's it going to be.
I think that's another podcast for another time, because I wonder if every human being is ignorant and stupid, and if they don't realize that, they're both. I don't know. Well, anyways, when I was 59 a year ago, I was introduced to the concept that my feelings were important. Like my youngest brother, Ken, and then my son, Ben, they both said, like around the same time, they said, Ben said, Dad, your feelings are important. And my brother Ken said, Mark, your feelings are important. I had never realized that.
Well, they should be important to you. Then it's a question of what are you feeling? Is it destructive or constructive or somewhere in between? It's back to life is 360.
You know, I'm sitting here listening to this, and I guess I've probably been the luckiest guy in the world, because my mother taught me from a social standpoint on how to deal with people in a social environment and you know, those kinds of things. And yet my dad was an entrepreneur, and he taught me the kind of the business side of the deal. So I was extremely lucky to have two parents that both knew both sides of the deal. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, that they were the best in the world, but to me they were, and they taught me those different sides of life. And I think that there are a lot of people that don't have that capability, either because they grew up in a broken home or whatever it may be. But I was extremely lucky, and thank God for that, because I feel like they really taught me how to maneuver through life.
So in pursuing this for a year, my feelings, and I'm like, well, what if they do matter, Mark? So I pursued them, and I found something very interesting. What's that, Mark? Thanks for asking.
I'm smiling already because I'm dying to hear what you're going to say.
I found that feelings are addictive.
Yeah.
I found that the more feelings I had, the more addicted I was to those feelings. And I found that those feelings often led to entitlement, self-righteousness, and victimhood. The more entitled I got, the more I wanted, the more self-righteous I felt, the more self-righteous, and the bigger the victim I was, the more victim I realized, you know what? Like, I don't know why they don't teach this stuff younger. Like, I realized I could use my feelings to manipulate people. I'm like, I never realized that before. Like, I can use my feelings. Like, it's so, and so I'm like, when I'm going into this dark world of feelings. I'm like the whole world has the feelings. They're all backwards. Like, I think everybody's talking about feelings, and people act as if their feelings reveal something about other people, when our feelings don't reveal anything about other people. They just reveal stuff about us.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody's teaching that. So fortunately, I didn't go too far down that dark hole of feelings.
But do you think that they're based on just your perception of the world and what's going on around you? I mean, that's really what feelings are about.
Well, I think it's all connected into us. Like, all feelings are connected into us. And so it's how we see and interpret the world. And so the vaccine for entitlement is thankfulness. Like I'm saying, hey, I'm the most, it's like I've had the most blessed. And then self-righteousness is humility, and victimhood is taking ownership of stuff. And these are the vaccines. But once you get locked into your feelings, oh my goodness. And the more you're focused on feelings, the more you're like, the less you can feel of anybody else's feelings, and there's no empathy.
Well, I think it was about couple, 3 months ago, I was sitting thinking. In fact, I was thinking about you, Mark, and I realized that the person I have the most conversations with, and I mean actual conversations, is me. I was sitting there thinking, and I'm inside my head, I'm answering and asking questions back and forth to myself, and I'm thinking, "What are you nuts? Is this just? Are you going crazy? What's going on here?"
You're not alone, Tom. You're not alone,
No,
my friend.
I love having conversations with myself because there's no stupid people. It's an intelligent conversation. When it's with myself, it's always right. I always am smart. I always get it. But it's weird to me how people don't think. Like they don't think. Anyways, we want to give some of those that are participating an opportunity to maybe ask some questions here before Peter and Tom have to take off. Kenny, did you have a question?
I had a few questions, but I guess I don't know which one to ask. So when Peter said something about, he doesn't think there's any stupid people, like he just thinks that people do stupid things. So what causes people to do stupid things?
Well, look, just to not rephrase what I said, I say we're all born equal, right? In terms of our heart and our ego, which is our brain. Then it's a question of how things get programmed over time, the experiences you go through. Tom described his parents. I described mine similarly. In that sense, I've always felt blessed as I've gone through time, not in the beginning, because I didn't know what I was equipped with when I was 18, 19 years old. Right? So, sorry, now I've gone off on a thread. Say your question again. Can you repeat?
He asked about stupid people.
What causes people to do stupid things?
Okay. So it's a self-awareness thing, right? And a consciousness thing, because why would any of us do something stupid? And we all do from time to time, right? And it's because we're running on a lane, fight or flight or hide. That kind of instinctive thing that we all have. And so, when you're emotionally going into fight or flight, and if you think about it, almost every reaction comes back to that. If you're feeling confident and competent and curious and open, then you don't do stupid things or silly things or obviously silly things because you would know that it was. But that requires you to be feeling compassionate, empathetic. If these things are going on amongst other people, and open and curious. It's look before you leap, and looking before you leap is just Tom said, and I would say the same thing too. The most conversations that I have over time is with myself. I mean, I'm a communicator too, so I have lots of conversations with people. But the question I'm always asking myself internally is, why am I doing that? Or what's my intention, or what's my goal, or how do other people that I'm working with, how they feel about it per se, but am I being thoughtful enough not to drive them to do things that are in their mind feel wrong before we, and that's why you collaborate with people, is to find the best way forward as a group, right? But you have to do it inside yourself first, because that's the point where you will notice that won't work, or that was a silly thing to say, or that was a thoughtless thing to say, but if you're not even thinking about these things, then you may not even notice you're being stupid or doing something thoughtless or stupid. So it's a continuous process of self-awareness, consciousness that's rooted in compassion, empathy for oneself in the beginning, because if you have to reason with yourself before you can reason with other people. And if you're unreasonable with yourself, then you can't reason with yourself to come up with a thought ask a question or to find a way forward or recognize what's going right versus recognize what's going wrong. These are all things that you have to be aware of inside yourself first, and that reduces the likelihood of you doing something for yourself that's stupid, to use that word, or it reduces the likelihood of you doing something that seems stupid to other people that you're working with. But you can avoid it by being thoughtful and reason.
Peter, I think you kind of hit on it there too, because I look back on when I've done stupid things, it's because I haven't had any conversation with myself prior to it. And I realize it's stupid after. If I'd have had the conversation with myself, should I or shouldn't I, and think through it, I probably wouldn't have done half the dumb things that I did.
Yeah, and a lot of time
right on, you have to communicate.
And a lot of time with when it involves other people, because we're not always obviously living and working alone, we tend to get defensive about whatever it was we did irrationally, irresponsibly, thoughtlessly, because we didn't think about it. So when we do it and then get caught or make a mistake, instead of fessing up to yourself first, we tend to defend it. Well, I didn't really think it mattered. Oh, well, you're being childish for saying that based on what I did or what I suggested. Once you get to be defensive, then who's being stupid? Right, the person you're wrestling with, or you.
Once you shut down, you've lost the war.
Yeah. So,
does that help, Kenny?
I put him into a coma.
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
So with what you shared, Peter, that's something we can apply to ourselves. So how do we just share that same thing with others that we see are potentially being stupid or doing stupid things?
Well, notice how when Mark asked the question about, so we're just talking about the label stupidity at the moment, because it's easy to say somebody's stupid or not, right? But that once we define something as being stupid, you kind of don't leave any options for talking yourself down from it or avoiding it in the future, because you kind of have to learn your lesson. And that it's back to the person you think is being stupid and they haven't noticed because they just go through reacting to life instead of thinking about how to react to life. I mean, arguably you could say that person's stupid. Then the question is, well, if you've got compassion or empathy, then you don't want them to keep going like that, because their life's going to get worse and worse if they're like that. But it's back to, it's that prickly thing of being able to ask somebody, why would you say that? Why do you think that? Can you tell me? Because that's really digging for the truth of why somebody's done something stupid. And it may be at the end of it, I've had this a few times where they just say, I don't know. And then it's tough, because if somebody doesn't know why they did something stupid, even if they just said, I didn't think about it. Okay, well, the lesson is think about it the next time, right? Then you avoid doing the stupid thing. But I'm finding more and more, if I ask that question to try and make somebody think, why did you do that? Or why did you say that? Because I really want to understand, to help them understand.
I think one of the things, Kenny, that you're probably facing is that people do things in the moment. I mean, we're always doing things in the moment, and we're doing things. And what I'm walking away from that I never realized before is that people don't think about what they do before they do it or before they say it. And they don't think about what they did before they did it or after they said it. Like, people aren't thinking. They're just not thinking. And if you're not thinking, and they don't connect the dots, they don't go ahead and realize that their life is miserable in this area. So it's sometime, I mean, today is yesterday's, future, and tomorrow's past. And people, so they have a moment in time, sometimes, and they don't go back in time and say the result, the thing that's bad happening, the thing that's painful that's happening to me today is because of a choice I made in the past. It's like their worldview is to fix everybody else. Their worldview is to fix everybody else, not fix themselves. It's the 9 Ds to defeat versus the 7 Ps to prosperity.
But question for Tom on this theme, Tom. I mean, you're in sales, being in sales, and I the same. I would say people all the sales training in the world. It's not about learning the sales script per se. It's learning how to apply the sales training with a customer, which is again variable. You don't just parrot things.
And it's different with every customer that you come in front of.
Why?
You're absolutely right, Peter. You learn the skill, and then you apply the skill based on conversations with the person that you're sitting in front of.
Yeah, training is knowledge. Skill takes practice and thought, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Whether you're a carpenter, a salesman, a CEO, a plumber. I mean, at some point you have to listen, you have to take the knowledge, and it's not black and white. Knowledge is not black and white. It's variable, it's malleable, and you have to practice applying it to turn it into a skill that will allow you to repeat what the activity or the conversation or whatever it is over and over again and make a difference.
So for those, all of you are invited to participate at 8 o'clock on Saturday mornings, Eastern time, live. And we're going through these 28 videos that have changed my life forever. Like every one of these videos and they're short videos. Most of them, some of them are a minute. And we go through, and it's so interesting to go through these videos. And so people go through them before they participate. And then at 8 o'clock, then we all talk about it. Like, what did you see in this video? So we're all watching the same, same exact video. So the one I was referencing to is Bonhoeffer's, theory of stupidity. And so that one is such an intriguing one. And it's like when you watch these thought-provoking videos, it's so interesting to see how one person sees this and another person sees this and another person sees this. Like we all see different things, and we walk away, I think, all being enriched in an amazing way. Rosanna, do you have a question?
That's funny. I don't remember having a question.
No, I was asking, did you have a question?
No, I don't have any questions.
Marla, did you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Oh, thanks for being a part of it. Lane, did you have a question? Any other questions that you have?
I don't think so. I mean, it was great to meet you guys again. Get to see Tom and Peter, and it's been fun.
Peter, any other things that you guys have? I've got.
We could go on for hours, but no.
It's like I'm working on this new project.
I really have to say, Mark, you and Peter are probably the two most amazing people, and I've met hundreds of thousands of people over my lifetime. But the difference between you two and the majority of everybody else is that you really are thought-provoking people. And I love people that get me thinking about different things. And you two are probably at the top of the heap for doing that.
Well,
So
I
thank you.
I appreciate that. And when we did that leverage project, that course, like, I mean, I remember coming to that frustrated and just being so frustrated and say, Tom, I'm just tired of, I tell people something and they say, I understand. And they don't understand. And I was so frustrated. And you said, oh, well, it's because they're not internalizing things. Oh, I love how you and Peter go ahead and like have the answers. Like and then Peter, like we go through the whole thing. And I have this, I wake up in the morning.
Mark, sorry, can I just say though, it's not the answers, it's the ideas. And Tom, right back at you, because I find the same thing when we're sharing conversation too. Lots of thought stimulated things. But there's no answers to anything particular. They're all just ideas. And it's a question of just finding the ones and being prepared to change the way you think to make them work for you. And then you're just taking, it's just, ideas are just knowledge, right? They're just knowledge. And then it's how you take that knowledge. It's like defining a word in the dictionary. There's lots of people would define in different ways. There's the way it's written in the dictionary, and then we can have a different opinion about compassion and this, that, and the other. So it's really all just ideas. And I think Tom and you and we're just open to not defending anything in particular, but just sharing ideas. And then it's up to ourselves and anybody else that's tuning in to think, how can I make that work for me? How can I apply that to become a skill for me? So that's what I was collecting in my 20s, doing all kinds of not such big jobs, is listening to people that I didn't know anything. I grew up in a 10-mile radius of a 250 population for the first 18 years of my life, right? So it was just the curiosity and people's not attaching myself to somebody's thoughts or beliefs, because I don't know whether they were right or wrong. It's just being prepared to listen and be curious and try to figure out what information is floating around in the world that you can use and turn into a skill. And in this corporate structures and business structures are all such that they need skills. And then as you go through, it's not just work skills that as you get older, it's life skills too, so that you can deal with the adversity and still keep your sanity. It's all just thoughts and ideas and being prepared to recognize and learn from your mistakes and stay open to still receive possible solutions when you kind of seeking the truth through knowledge and then applying it.
Well, for me, when I asked that question and Tom said, well, it's internalization, and I could feel he was right. Like I could feel, I'm like, that's the right answer. And then I asked him, how do you get people to internalize things? He's like, oh, I don't know that. So, which was really cool, because I went to bed frustrated, but I got a great night's sleep. And the next morning I came up with this model. Should
I give you a clue though to how to get people to think about it?
Okay.
Associate it with pain or pleasure.
Ah, you're right. Absolutely.
All right. So I'm writing that down.
Their pain or their pleasure, because you're either going to, that's what it's fight or flight, pain or pleasure, fight, flight, or hide.
So then I had the whole thing, like all these different pieces, except there was this one piece here missing. I had one piece that wasn't missing. Like, I'm like you put the 10,000 piece puzzle together and you're missing the last piece. It's like, so this whole thing came to me at night. I woke up in the morning, got out of bed, and I just took the first piece of paper and I jotted the whole thing down, and I don't have this last piece. I'm like, you go through, questions and awakening and listening and why and see and insights and purification of intentions, radically thinking different, leverage capabilities that give internalization, that gives the change. Then you do. And then what happens? And there was nothing there. And Peter's like, oh, like just casually, oh, you failed. And I'm like, that's exactly what it is. Like it's
pleasure
just,
or pain, pain of failure.
Right. Yeah. And so, so you both have been a great encouragement on Life GPS. And so what this thing will do now is absolutely insane. I've got a friendship channel
Mark,
Yep.
can I just say on that last, when you had change, I know when your cursor hovered over change, I just wanted to interject and say experiment. Sure, you can have a plan to apply and implement and execute kind of thing in business or in life, but none of us really know what's going to work for sure. So you also got to be prepared to think. I think to get outside that, it's got to be black and white to be a solution. You also got to be prepared to fail, of course, but part of change is just experimenting, right?
Right.
It's not when you go around that thing, ask questions, seek answers, and contemplate, internalize, rationalize, realize, which is the output. It's then that you then apply. That's practicing a skill, and yeah, it's observing if there's any change of that. But it's just also being prepared to experiment when you're trying to find a better way. And then it's not about, you're not failing at anything. At worst, you're just going to get a lesson, make another change, try something different, and you're going to keep.
Because failure is always a choice, and there's only two ways to fail, and that's fail to try or fail to learn. If people aren't trying, then it's failure. If people aren't learning, then it's failure. But I agree with you on that. This here, I have a friendship panel. I have 4 different levels of friends. So the first level is people will like me. Second level is Mark will irritate you. Third level is you'll love Mark. And the fourth level is our visions will connect. Our first conversation over 20 years ago with Tom, I asked him what his life vision was, and he said to change how real estate's done all over the world. He says, what's your life vision? I said, touch every single person in the world, one person at a time. A huge difference in every aspect of their life in a really fun and exciting way, and that's 8+ billion people. He said, just casually, he's like, you'll do it. I said, I will. He's like, yeah. I'm like, how do you know? He says, I can just tell. I'm like, wow. Like nobody ever said that to me before. Oh, here, there's all these tools. There's all these tools in here. And so you have the life balance wheel, Tom. And now there's a work, there's a partner, there's a spouse balance wheel. And then you can go ahead and graph out the people in the based on their personality. And then you can have the passion circles, and you can get a whole group of people, like you get a whole group of people, a whole team of people, and have all of them do their passion circles. And then it'll show you where there's interactions of passions. And then there's this is the atomic ripple reaction tree. So this was discovered a number of years ago by Emily and I when we were looking at bringing peace to the Middle East. And so in here, there's 31 roles. So I believe these 31 roles are required for every entrepreneur to be successful. They don't have to have them all themselves, but they have to have somebody there. And so what it does is then it goes ahead and you build groups of people, and then you help them learn how to all work together in doing this based on their personalities. So sometime we'll do, and I'll get you guys over. You guys can be part of the friendship. We're still working on the experience. So the experience is still, it only takes like, I don't know, 2 minutes or something to join. But like at 60, I want to be connecting more with level 3 people. Like how do I find more
But you've been
Peters
doing
out
that
there?
for 60 years, Mark.
What's that?
You've been doing that for 60 years. I mean, look at all of the things you have. All those things came because you were talking with people who had ideas, and then that got your brain thinking, and you come up with all these graphs and charts and programs and things that you have.
Yeah, but I got to get to the 8 billion, Tom. There's got to be.
There's enough computing power for you to get to 8 billion of them and have all the programs in there.
What's that?
I said there isn't enough computing power for you to reach, to take all the ideas you'd have with those 8 billion people you're going to be talking to and put them into a system.
Well, yeah, but it might take me another year or two to figure it all out. And then by then the computing power will be there.
There you go.
And so it's like there's all of this stuff now that interconnects. And so you can interconnect somebody's personality with their life balance wheel, with their passion circle. And it, like, Peter, I don't know that you recognize the impact you had on me when you said, Mark, you're shaking your head. You're like, Mark, I'm just telling you, of all the Fortune 100 company president, all the top level C-level executives of the they wouldn't understand. I'm like, oh, okay. Like that made sense. I couldn't understand why people around me weren't understanding, because to me, it all seems simple. It's like, it's not complicated. It's just this box and this box and this piece. These things all fit together. They all do. And it's
Right.
like,
The reason I said that, even though you didn't ask, is because they're when you're dealing with that situation, you're in a tunnel vision, playing a master game, right? Shareholders, employees, competition, strategy. This stuff takes it takes certainly a wise head, which is a patient head, which is a mind that's not in a race. And money, power, greed, the whole rat race kind of thing, it's a race, and you got to be focused on that. So the reason that I said that at the time, and I still say it now though, but the reason is because nobody's looking for, very rarely looking for untried solutions, and so a lot of your, let's call it, philosophy and way requires people to be open at that level, and looking for solutions outside of what they already have. And that's why a lot of the C-suite isn't there. They're so tunnel visioned on surviving at their own level in the rat race, and unless it's something that is obvious to them as a tool because it's proven by whatever institution or whatever, they in that sense think they're too busy to give it some thought. They go with the known and not the unknown. That's
where
it's fear.
Yeah,
Fear to step outside the box, because in their box they can play the game.
Yep.
Well, it takes courage to go, hang on a minute, I need to go listen to something, a different tune here, because this tune is just keeping me level with everybody else, and it's stressful for the individual, stressful for employees. When companies are fighting hard to compete, return on shareholder value, and blah, 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 blah. It's a serious game.
And that's where Einstein, when he says you can never solve a problem on the level it's created.
There you go. Bingo.
Like, what does that mean? It means we create our own problems, and the only way we're going to solve our problem is to go ahead and, like, what I think is missing in business is the arts, and what's missing in the arts is business. Like the business needs creative, like outside the box, like something, there's no box. There's like, here's something that you like, but like you say, that it's like people are comfortable in the box, and it's like,
well, corporate strategy, corporate policy, regulation, laws, all this stuff, it's not very flexible. If you're in a corporation like BMW or Apple or Google or that, you think they have bean bags you sit on and play games and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they have their way everybody has their way of being successful, and the bigger the machine, the more rigid it is, because you got fiscal policy, and there's just a whole list of things that keep you in the lane in which you're playing, right? And in order to leapfrog like an Elon Musk does, you can't have any lanes.
So
If you want to get to
encouraging-
8 billion people, there can be no lanes around you that you're bumping up against. Not to make it sound like it's easy if you do that. It's not. But if you're going to conform to the usual way of doing something on a massive scale, you can't. Because the way things work normally was which follower on the planet has contact or is known by 8 billion people? There isn't one. So what does that mean? That means you've got to do something beyond what everybody's already tried.
Right? Like people think 2 billion.
And not be afraid to do it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's a game. Let's go
Right.
play.
Yeah.
Right. This is why Rosanna loves me hanging around both of you. She does. She does. Because it's like she loves to see the child in Mark come out. Like we're all just 3-year-olds. We're all just playing. Like we're all what's your idea? What you've been up to the last year or two? Like what's going on here and here? And these are the different podcasts that Voices of Integrity has asked me to participate in. And you can see there's a lot of them. like it's crazy how many there are. And it's like we're looking for interesting people that are passionate about whatever they're passionate about. And then how do you get those people to go ahead and float them to the top, give them a platform to say, hey, folks, like, how do you know if somebody's over-identifying with a group of people? So we're all parts of groups. So the way you know if somebody's over-identifying with a group of people is you say something about that group and see how the person responds. If the person becomes angry and upset, then they're over-identifying with that group. This is where the newest one is podcast for comedy. My dad was a Baptist pastor, raised Christian. So I'm going into comedy. Kevin King is the first one who introduced me to that concept. He said, Mark, you'd be a great comedian, probably 12 years ago. He said, you'd be a great comedian. I don't think so. He says, no, you would. I said, why? He says, because you're willing to say things that other people see, but they won't say. And so, the groups that I will be talking about is the white Christian male over 50, or Christians, or pastors, or men, or women. Like, it's like, if you, like in comedy, if you can't laugh about your group and the flaws within the group and the gaps within the group, it's not going to go well for the world. It just won't.
Well,
Tom,
sorry, just on that whole thing though, I think, look, it's all in the delivery as a comedian, right?
Right.
And so I think when somebody says somebody like you could be a comedian, I think they're absolutely right too, because you got this kind of slightly sarcastic questioning, and so much of comedy is about asking the question that nobody else does. But then it's about the delivery, right? You got to have a sense of humor, not take it seriously. Otherwise, the people that are the target of the humor take it seriously, and then they can't laugh at themselves and laugh with you, so they become a victim of you. It's all in the delivery, Mark. If you start having fun with it, you'd be an excellent comedian based on all the stuff you talk about. You just got to not be worry about upsetting people, because that's out of your control. You just got to go have fun with it. That's what comedians do. They have fun with it.
So we're among friends here, and anybody listening to the podcast, there's no way they got this far in the podcast. So I want to try a line and just test it out. Rosanna, what do you think? You think I ought to try it or not? Too early?
Go for it.
that was like a, yeah, go for it.
So
See what happens. Wear a Kevlar vest.
Like, I have social autism, so if you're hearing me for the first time, I have social autism. And so what does that mean? It means that I can see where people are stupid very fast, and I'm going to just tell them they're stupid. I think they're going to give me a hug and thank me, because that's what you should do and then I think all their friends are going to do it too. Because all their friends know people are stupid. Anyways, so Rosanna's having some tests. This is why I would say, is it too soon? Like, is it too soon? So she's having some tests. There's concern about cancer. And this could be life-threatening. So we haven't gotten the results back from the test, but this week we're supposed to. So, so I said to my wife, because, I have social autism. I'm like, well, honey, the good news is, sweetheart, is that I said, the good news is no matter what the test results come back, like, it's okay. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if the tests come back that you don't have cancer, that's good, obviously. And if the tests come back that you do have cancer and you could die, that's okay too. She's like, how is that okay? I said, well, either way, you get attention.
And so when you
Yeah,
pick
he got
yourself up
slapped
off
for
the
that.
floor,
He got
I'm not
slapped
sure
for
that.
It didn't work well for him.
That's
I
man.
how many times did you hit him, Roseanne?
Well, he is still standing, so I guess I didn't do it hard enough.
That's funny. I think that's just funny. It's like every husband knows that their wife wants attention. Like, women just want attention. I'm not saying men don't. I'm just saying women want attention. So I'm like, the Bible says laughter is good medicine. I'm like, and if the tests come back, or there's no cancer, nobody's going to give me credit and say, Mark, you healed your wife. Like, they won't do that, which they should, because. So anyways, I'm like,
I'm not sure that's the example you should have used to practice humor, Mark. You can work your way up to jumping big buildings, right? But I think I'd have probably started with something less significant.
Roseanne, can I give you a tip?
Until somebody knows you're a comedian.
sorry, Tom, what were you saying?
I asked Roseanne if I could give her a tip.
Go for it.
If the results come back that you do have it, because I've had it, the best thing that got me through it was you don't ever acquiesce to it. You continue doing the things you do every single day from morning till night that you would have done if they weren't diagnosed with it. And you listen to your doctors and do whatever they tell you to do, but you do not acquiesce to that cancer. Mentally, you just move forward as if you don't have it.
Now Tom's taunting me. Man, you both are ganging up on me now.
No,
there's a whole comedy routine I have on doctors. Like a whole comedy routine I have on doctors. Like, for example, like when we were, when we had young kids, Rosanna took 3 of the kids in and they had ear infections, and she's like, she calls me up and I'm at work and she says, hey, they need amoxicillin. I said, they don't need amoxicillin. She's like, what do you mean? I said, they don't need amoxicillin. They'll be fine. And she's like, you're not a doctor. You're a business guy. I'm like, no, honey, I understand. Like, the human body was designed to heal itself. The human body knows more than the doctors do. They just do, honey. And she man, did she get mad at me? Oh, she was not. Finally, she's like, fine. If they go deaf, it's on you. I'm like, okay, I can handle that.
So, Mark, now I'm going to tell you repeat what I said earlier. It's not that there isn't humor in everything, but there's times where you got to go, I made a mistake. I need to learn a lesson. I ran before I could walk with comedy.
So here's something I want to help you understand, Peter. So 10 years later, she's reading some woman's magazine. And she goes and says, wow, they found the whole medical community is saying, yeah, put kids on amoxicillin. I'm like, no, that's not a good idea. 10 years later, the medical community catch up to me.
Oh, I know. I got it.
Yeah. And they were wrong.
Oh, I know. I know what you're saying is true.
And so she just went in for a doctor, and it's a friend we know. We've been over to their house, and she goes ahead, and I'm in there in the doctor's office, and tears are flowing down my face. This is before we know anything. Tears are flowing down my face, and she's like, I'm like there's a feeling I get about Rosanna that I had with my parents before they died. Like, there's no test, there's no nothing. It's just a feeling, a sense. And she's like, oh, don't worry about it. She's like, your wife is healthy. I'm like, okay. So I walk out. What does she prescribe to Rosanna? She prescribes estrogen. She didn't even test to see what her estrogen levels were. Like, what's going on? And then Rosanna reads the side effects, and it's a heart attack, it's blood clots, it's all this stuff. And it's like the doctors, like it's all goofy, it's all wonky, it's all weird. And why? Because they think they know so much. They don't understand, like they've forgotten the core and essence, like their worldview is just, I don't know. This is where, so I'll work on the warm up a little bit, Peter. So I'll work on that, try it out 2 or 3 times, because when I was diagnosed with, social autism, I told Rosanna, it was like, I don't know, 30 years into our marriage, 25 years into our marriage, I said, honey, I've been diagnosed with social autism. And she's like, you have not. I said, yes, I have. She's like, you have not.
Giving yourself an insurance policy or cover fire.
And I said to her, she's like, I self-diagnosed myself. She says, you can't do that. I said, yes, I can. So the reason that social autism isn't diagnosed is there's only 4 people that have ever been diagnosed with it. There's not enough money in medicine to go ahead and do it. So it's not a real thing until there's money. There's so much comedy out there about so many things, but you're right, Tom, and Peter, it's in the presentation, and I've got to work with the presentation. It's a little too intense, and I've got to learn. But if I get other people laughing, like if my wife's here to protect me, and if she can laugh about it, like if the Bible says laughter is good medicine, well, if you can laugh about it, if you can go ahead, I love what Tom's advice is. You keep doing the same things. So it's cool to be in a season of time, like after something happens, then it's easier to be thankful. But when you're in the middle of it and you don't know, it could go one way, it could go another way. Another time we could talk about quantum. Like there's this guy I know, and he says that the cells, he says this guy's super smart. And he says that the cells in the body, the DNA, that there's medical proof for this, that cells haven't made a determination if they're going to be cancerous or not. What? And it's like he says that when you like, I wonder, when you see it, is the doctor looking for cancer? Is the doctor looking for not cancer? Doctor might be looking for cancer. So like, we don't understand.
Cancer cells are actually a form of body's defense mechanism. They're just taking effectively the bad cells, the corrupted cells, and pulling them together. Right? That's part of what's happening with that.
One more time.
And hence you end up with these conglomerates of malformed cells, but they're being encapsulated effectively through the cancer process.
See, it's weird.
So you end up with more bad cells than good cells as it spreads.
Yeah. Yes, as it spreads.
See,
yeah.
This is like my mom. She was diagnosed with cancer, and they said she had 2 to 6 months to live. And she's one of the closest people in the world. I go into and my youngest sister's a medical doctor. And I go into the hospital, and my mom's in the hospital bed, and and tears are flowing down my face because my mom's got 2 to 6 months to live, and I'm crying, and my mom's there, and she's like, Mark, she's like, you know, you may be the only one who can help me, right? She's a Baptist pastor's wife. She doesn't believe in miracles. She like, that's not for today. I mean, you know, so it's like, it was weird. I'm like, what do you mean, Mom? She's like, you know, Mark, how you think. I'm like, oh, tears dry up. I'm like, oh, so you don't want to die? She's like, I guess not. I'm like, well, that's not very, you know, like that's not. And she didn't live, you know, 2 to 6 months. She lived 18 months. And I think if I could have put her around people who thought differently, I believe she could still be alive today. Like, it's just.
Well, to what Tom just said earlier about essentially just don't surrender to it, that, you know, it's hard not to be tempted to succumb to fear, to the idea of disease and so on. It's not that it's just part of it. Not surrendering to it, giving up mentally is a huge part of it. That's what I just wanted to, without elaborating more than that, where I say, you know, Tom's right on the money. When you're suffering, whether it's depression or disease, then you just can't. You've got to try to, as hard as you can, not to accept it, to surrender to it.
So if you guys had just 5 more minutes, real quick. So she's going to a Bible study this morning, and we talk, and then we hug before she goes. And it's weird because she and I are playing pickleball, you know, 3 times a week. She's playing 4 times a week. And she's like, the women at pickleball seem to be more interested in her health and what she's going through than the women at church, which is just weird. But anyways, so I'm holding her and hugging her this morning, and she's like, you know, it's like the fear. I have fear. And so, Tom, what would you suggest? Like, if somebody has fear, not just for this, just fear, how do you overcome that?
Well, what I've really found with fear is that you have the fear before you actually know what the issue really is.
Yeah.
And so that's why you kind of have, there's going to be an answer one way or the other. And you can't let that direct yourself. You just have to, you know that it's either going to be this way or it's going to be that way. And if it's this way, all things will be good and nothing will change. We'll move on. If it's this way, I then have to do whatever I need to do to get cured, but I also can't let it affect my life and disrupt my whole routine. I mean,
the way you feel, the way you feel whether you're being compassionate for somebody or whether you're the person that's suffering, the way you feel inside changes everything. It's simple to say, you know, when you feel adrenaline going, or, you know, anxiety, it's a feeling. And when you're trying to overcome a disease or a mental situation, if people are supporting you, even though they may be saying positive things, if inside of them they're actually fearing for your life, for you, that has to stop too. It's like a hard thing to say, but
go ahead, Peter.
My mother taught me, even today at 92, very frail, when there's stuff going on in the family, these kinds of things, I can tell you, and this is where I learned it from as best I can. My mum would go to the church 100 yards down the road every day, every morning, every night, and she will pray for people. And I know inside her heart, all she has is that loving feeling for that person. Not she's scared to death that they're going to pass or they're going to continue to suffer trauma. And think about that. How many times you've met people and you hear something and you feel sad or scared, fearful for them, but then now you're putting out that energy too, the very thing that we should be encouraging people not to feel themselves, because it's that inner strength that you need to overcome those things. And you need people around you like that. They're not fearing for you, saying nice things. but who genuinely feel that energy of, I can only use the word love, not fear. That fearlessness is what helps individually and collectively overcome. It's why the power of meditation for other people or praying for other people can be equally as powerful, because it's not about the thought per se, it's about the feeling you have when you're praying for somebody. It's about the feeling that you have when you're trying to overcome your own whatever disease, depression, mental disorder. That feeling is what cures you. And it's exceptionally hard when you feel like your life is threatened or somebody that you love is threatened, to hold that feeling of love for them, or if it's going on with you, for yourself. And it takes practice.
I remember sitting in that doctor's office with Donna when we were getting the results. And when he told me that it was a positive result, I turned to Donna and I said, I'm going to need you to do two things. One, I don't want any pity whatsoever throughout any of this process, no matter what the end result is. And two, I need you to take care of the doctor's appointments and all that other stuff, because I've got to focus here. I got to focus on me and keep doing the things that I'm doing. And I turned to the doctor and said, and I want whatever you're going to recommend, I want it to start today. I don't want this crap living in me one more second than it has to. So let's get, he goes, you don't understand some of the effects of this stuff. I said, I don't care what the effects are. Just whatever you think is best to kill this stuff, get me on it today and let's start killing it. And I came out of there with an extremely positive attitude about, there's no way in hell this thing is going to get me. No way.
Nice. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Tom. Roseanne, any closing thoughts or questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. If you're listening to the rebroadcast of this, you have
Thank
any
you, too.
questions, connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300, outside the US 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.